The war in Afghanistan appears to be evolving in the choice of targets, in the timetable, even in the vocabulary. The phrases of the day, for example, tank plinking and ground truth, which means basic truth, we gather. Choice words, too, on leaking and on claims from the Taliban. In all, it was a busy day for our CNN military affairs correspondent, Jamie McIntyre. Here's his report.
The anti-Taliban forces in northern Afghanistan are beginning to see results as U.S. planes seek out concentrations of Taliban and al-Qaeda fighters dug in on the front lines.
Now we're starting to work on some Taliban targets that are arrayed out in the field against folks that we would like to help.
Part of the emphasis now is on what the military calls tank plinking. Cockpit videos released by the Pentagon show Taliban tanks being picked off in various locations around Afghanistan. But the Pentagon admits that so far, the outnumbered Northern Alliance has been unable to capture the strategic northern city of Mazar-e-Sharif or advance on the Taliban-held capital of Kabul.
We have had uneven success. To the extent we have excellent ground-to-air coordination, the success improves. To the extent that some of the forces move forward against Taliban and al-Qaeda forces, our success improves because it flushes them.
CNN has learned new details of Friday's U.S. commando raid against 2 Taliban targets. While Army paratroopers dropped from C-130s on a dry lake airstrip 60 miles southwest of Kandahar, other special forces flew on helicopters from the aircraft carrier Kitty Hawk, with logistical support from a forward base at Dalbadan, one of 3 Pakistani bases being used by the United States. The objective was a compound used by Taliban leader Mohammed Omar. The operation was supposed to be shrouded in complete secrecy, so Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld was incensed that Friday morning newspaper reports signaled the ground campaign was beginning. But his anger appeared directed at the leakers more than the press.
I'm too busy then to run around trying to find who did that. I don't know if anyone is, to be perfectly honest. I'd certainly hope that the people who were parachuting in don't find the person.
The Pentagon says there were no casualties, and officials could not explain a set of landing gear the Taliban displayed as evidence they downed a U.S. helicopter. The Pentagon also denied there is any evidence the U.S. bombed a hospital where the Taliban claims 100 people were killed. But the U.S. is still reviewing the case. Pentagon officials insist they knew that Taliban leader Mohammed Omar was no longer at the compound before they launched the raid. Nevertheless, they said they got valuable intelligence, which is taking some time to process because of a shortage of translators. Jamie McIntyre, CNN, the Pentagon.
We're now on the line being walked these days between the public's need to know and the Pentagon's need for secrecy. Winston Churchill took an extreme view. In wartime, he said, truth is so precious that she should always be attended by a bodyguard of lies. But times have changed, and so has warfare. Has the line moved as well? Well, joining me now to talk about that and where the war is headed, retired General Don Shepard, and he comes to us tonight from CNN Center in Atlanta. Hello again, General Shepard. My first question is, Secretary Rumsfeld right to be angry at the leakers?
Well, Judy, this is nothing new. Of course he's angry at the leakers. He's angry at anything that could put troops in danger potentially or for real. It's very difficult these days with all the reporting capability to keep things secret. Nobody from the Pentagon goes and lays out a briefing to the press and says, this is what's happening, please keep it quiet until later. That's not what happens. There are just so many sources available. And at the initial onset of hostilities, these things always happen. You have to tighten down, you have to warn people, you have to warn them about giving snippets of information. So this is nothing new, but of course he had a right to be angry and incensed that it could put our troops in danger. It's a warning to everyone, Judy, and I think everyone understands it.
Well, I think most people I know in the press, I know certainly we at CNN, are very sensitive about putting any information out which would jeopardize any U.S. soldier, anybody on the ground or in the air over there for that matter. But let me just ask you, by having a story in the newspaper the morning of this operation saying generally that ground forces were going to be operating, did that story jeopardize that mission?
Well, I'll have to let Secretary Rumsfeld decide whether it jeopardized that mission or not. This is very difficult. It's difficult for we military analysts to decide what to say and what not to say. There are many people that say you shouldn't be saying anything. Don't give them any information. My view is, and I think most of the military analysts' view is, that it is simply impossible to keep the American public in the dark. It's very important that we talk to the American people about what they're doing with their sons and daughters out there. They need to know we have good equipment. They need to know they have good leadership, responsible leadership. They need to have an idea of what's going on without the details of the targets or when it's going to be launched. So again, I'll let the Secretary and the Pentagon characterize the leaks and the information out there. We try to be very responsible at CNN, and I've been very, very impressed. People come to me daily saying, is it okay to talk about this, or isn't it? Or how should we couch this? I'm very encouraged by what I see, Judy.
Well, I'm asking you these questions, of course, General, because they did come up today at the briefing, and the Secretary of Defense spent a considerable amount of time on. Let me ask you now about the war and how it's going. I know you listen to all these briefings. What is your sense now? Is there progress being made sufficient to what the Pentagon had wanted at this point?
I'm not sure exactly what the Pentagon wanted, but progress is being made. We've now gone against the fixed targets. We've started some of the things that you talked about, tank plinking, which is hitting individual tanks, came from the Gulf War. We're now, as General Myers said today, moving against targets arrayed against the Northern Alliance and other people that we want to help. Now, another thing that's very important to realize is these strikes look devastating. We see the bombs drop. But remember, this is a few fighters dropping individual weapons. This is by no means massive aerial attack of which we are capable. This is a number of strikes per day of around 90 to 100 is what we've been seeing. And in the Gulf War, we had as many as 2,500 a day. So imagine 25 times what we've got. I think we're making progress, but again, we may not see the movement of lines, the fall of cities as we normally think of war. It may be a slow process or even a rapid process of the dissolve of the Taliban and then the establishment of a coalition government. That may be what we see, Judy.
All right, General Don Shepard, and I will tell you, I was struck today by both General Myers and Secretary Rumsfeld saying that this is not going to be a war where you go from the air campaign to the ground campaign or vice versa, that it's going to be a mix and you're not going to know which is underway at any particular moment until you hear about it later. All right, General Don Shepard, thank you very much.